I wanted to ask you about the art throughout the novel. I
Hmm.
know that back in episode 38, I wanted to make sure I plugged Thomas Taylor, who also does a lot of illustrating on his books and who has a sequel to Malamander coming out shortly, worth a Google, esteemed audience. But when I talked with him, he talked a lot about being able to go back and forth between writing the book and drawing the book to help him out with world building and also to help him through some of those stretches that I think every writer comes to where the story is just not coming or whatever. And that was a way to maybe switch over to another mode and be creative and get work done until the writing kicked back in.
Yeah.
Do you find that to be your experience?
Yeah, definitely. You know, uh, in Wink, I don't actually draw characters as much. There's a couple of drawings of Ross and some memes that happen. It's more objects and things that he has sketched. Um, but especially like in the Life of Zarf books, I know that designing those characters and knowing what those characters look like um, definitely led me to, I understood the characters more. Like when I finally found the design for how I wanted Zarf to look, there was just part about the way he looked that gave me his personality a bit. So I think they feed off of each other. But there's also a certain amount of uh, I mentioned following your energy kind of thing, but there are days when your writing brain just isn't there, and it's kind of nice to be able to have. Oh, well, I have these 80 illustrations I need to do. So I can spend the day. It sort of takes pressure off you. It's like, oh, well, I can be productive, but I don't have to be that kind of productive. I can be this kind of productive today. Um, and there are days when I feel like writing the strip. There are days when I feel like sketching and inking the strip, or when I feel like writing, or when I feel like illustrating. And it's really nice to have that kind of find your lane each day. Now there are times when you get into a deadline and you don't have a choice. It's like, oh no, I have to work on this today. But yeah, I think one of the major things that I deal with is guilt. Sometimes when I'm drawing, I feel like I'm guilty that I'm not writing, or when I'm writing, I feel like I'm guilty that I'm not drawing. Um, but when I'm working on a book like Wink, and I know those illustrations have to be done as well as the writing, it's really nice. It's a really nice break sometimes to just relax, put on some music, and work on the illustrations for a day. Um, and that sort of can reset your brain a little bit, I think. And then you take that pressure off of yourself, because sometimes when I get into fighting with the plot, I can't figure out how to make something work, or I can't figure out exactly where I want to go next. Um, it's that thing where if you're trying to think of the name of some actor, and then you happen to, 2 hours later, you're doing something completely different and not thinking about it, and that name pops into your head. So I think that happens with writing as well. So it's nice to have productivity that's not the same kind of brain exercise, if that makes sense. Sounds like this
Oh,
kind of
I'm
went through the same as
jealous.
well.
You've got your subconscious working. I have to go mow the grass or do dishes because I'm not artistically talented that way. I wish.
Well,
It seems like that opens up all sorts of avenues for storytelling. Would
you
you
know, I
ever
get I
consider
get I
doing?
get ideas in the shower, and I wish I could take longer, hotter showers, but I feel bad about the environment, so I don't do that. So I try to get my ideas quickly during a hot shower, and then that usually you know that's usually where they come to me. It seems like.
Oh, we'll need to get a virtual reality shower going so that writers of the world can be in there 2 hours and the environment will be fine.
Yeah, yeah, that's not a bad idea. Yeah.
So what? Because I'm curious as I went through the drawings add so much to the story. I love the bat big diversions that really show us the inner workings of Ross's mind. Um, well, the prose in and of itself works just fine. If you were to do an audiobook for long stretches of this without those illustrations, the story is still 100% there. It's coming through very strongly. Would you ever consider writing a book that had no illustrations other than maybe the cover?
Definitely. Yeah. That's something I would like to try. And honestly, with Wink, we had before we landed on where we are right now, there were versions where I had lots more illustrations and lots more sort of cutaway jokes, almost gags, more like what I did in Life of Zarf or what you would see in Diary of a Wimpy Kid, something like that. I had a lot more of those jokes, like jokey jokes, I would say. And then at one point we took them all out, and then it was just the prose. And then, I started working on the Bat Pig idea. I brought those in. And at one point I had drawings in there of all the different characters. One thing about that was nice is, well, again, like I said, I think you get a sense of the character from the art that kind of helps build out that world. But I finally decided that I wanted to leave the people to be deciphered in people's minds. There were so many versions, and so much taking out illustrations and putting illustrations back in, and taking them out and putting them back in, and then rationalizing why we have this kind of illustration, and eventually I came down to these were sketches that he does in his sketchbook, and he's just, he doesn't do drawings of people as much. So you see more, he draws like the mask that they use to lock him down when he's getting his radiation treatments. You see sort of little drawings of his world. And so there was a lot of rationalizing in my head and it just felt too jokey. I never wanted anybody to think I was being flip or glib, or I can't even think what the word is for, I didn't want anybody to think I was taking cancer lightly. Especially having gone through it myself, I get a little bit of a pass, but at the same time, the worst thing that could ever happen is somebody to read this and be offended by the humor that's in it. So finding the right tone with the illustrations was as much a part of the book as finding the tone with the writing, I think. And ultimately, a lot of the humor comes from the way Ross thinks about things. So I feel like we landed in the right place. But yeah, it was a long way to answer that.
No, it's great.
I would love to write a book with, I'd like to write an adult novel at some point, or I don't, that sounds bad when you say adult novel. I just mean a novel for adults.
Well, Harrell, you're a grown man. You write whatever kind of book you want.
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of a closet horror fan. I would love to write something scary. I've come up with a few scary ideas for books, middle grade books, and apparently they've been too creepy or something. So we haven't gone down that path. But yeah.
I would love that, especially if I had some of your art throughout to enhance the horror. Oh, that'd be ooh.
Yeah. I had one idea.
Really where I can offer you a contract, but for what it's worth, publishers listening, I'm excited about it.
Yeah. I am too, and hopefully I'll find the right idea at some point that'll be the perfect blend of, scary but not too scary. Or as my friend's kid said when he was little, he used to say he'd want a story that was spooky, but he didn't say the S. He'd say pooky. It was like, I want pooky, but not too pooky. And so I always think of that by my head, like, make it spooky, but not too spooky. So, anyway.